And let me start sharing my screen. So as you guys know, let's see here, where am I? If I go to the syllabi, we are in this week here. So we're going to cover chapter 6 today. And next week, we will have our first test. And as I told you guys that I will have a look at the test. At this point, I believe the test is going to be in two forms. One of them is going to be a true and false type of questions. I'll give that, let's say, 30 minutes. And another form where I'm going to ask you to write a program. So that's what the test is going to be all about. So when the test is ready, I will make sure, of course, to make it available and explain it to you guys. I'm still thinking if I want to put it in a form of a programming question or just keep it true and false. So probably by the beginning of next week, I will have a definitely answer for that. But let's say for now, we're going to have two parts, true, false, and a programming question. So that was something that I want to talk about. Now, what we're going to be talking about today in this class, we're going to continue talking about classes. And what I'm going to be doing simply is I'm going to explain. I have a list that I made about all the points that I'm supposed to cover today. And I'm going to cover them in a form of an example. So I'm going to use an example to explain everything related to.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is chapter 6 included in the exam?
I will make. I'm not sure yet. Let me just have a look first.
Okay.
Probably, let's say in the weekend, I may send you guys an email to send you with more details.
Okay.
Okay. So let me stop sharing my screen here and let me move to Eclipse. Okay, so here's Eclipse. What I'm going to do today, let me close those. I'm going to create a class, and I just want you to think about this application here. We have a new library that's opened in a city. And in this library, we want to hold, or we want to have a database of records of the books are available in that library. So the first thing we have to do is simply to create a class called book. And in this class of books, we're going to create multiple book objects. So this is, again, the whole project here. Of course, when you think about library, it's a really big ecosystem, but we're going to just focus on the book class itself. So what I'm going to do here, I'm simply going to start a new project. Now, I'm pretty sure you might hear this new project. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing. Let me share my screen here. So I'm creating a new project. This project, I'm going to call it the book project. And immediately I'm going to click finish. And then I have to go back to Eclipse. And you'll see that I have the book project here at the top. And if I expand the view, again, let's delete this file. And now after that, in this area here, I'm going to create a class. I'm going to call it book. Now, of course, again, let me just share my screen again. This is going to be my book project. So I'm going to book class, sorry. I'm going to click book, and I'm make sure you don't choose the main function here. So I'm just going to click on finish. Immediately, I have to go back to Eclipse. And you'll see that now I have the book Java file here, and here's the book class here. Okay, now that we created the class, we need to start asking ourselves, what should we have? What properties we can have to describe a book? And I do have already created the class, so I'm just going to go with the list of properties. Now, of course, there's a lot of more properties we can use, but I'm just going to stick with what I have here. We have, for example, a title of a book. We can have the author of the book. We can have the publisher of the book. We have the ISBN number of the book. We can have a price for the book, and we have the number of pages of the book. So those are all properties for that book. Now we need to think about what will be a good data type for each one of them. For example, the title and the author should be strings. The publisher could be an integer. The ISBN could be a string. The price could be a double. And finally, the number of pages will be an integer. So those are my data types. Now, we said something last class is that when you create your data members, your properties of that class that you're about to create, you have to make sure that the data members are all private. And today we're going to demonstrate
Question.
this.
Is book an object?
Now I'm creating the class of the book. And then after you're done with the class, you create objects out of it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get to that point, and it will make more sense to you when I get to that point. But for now, I'm just describing what a book is and what can a book simply do. So, as I said, data members are simply going to be private. We said that it has to be private, and the reason again why it has to be private, because we said those data members usually we don't want to have them public, because if you create them public, you're giving full control access to the user. And if you give the user full control access, the user again will be able to assign whatever value that the user wants to those variables, and sometimes that could lead to a lot of problems. So as the person who's creating the class, you and only you should have a full control over what values are acceptable and what valuables are not acceptable. So in case any unacceptable value is assigned to any data member, you can actually change it. So let's go ahead. And again, to save time, I already created everything. So I'm just going to start copying and pasting into my project. So here we go. Yes?
Is it a concept of encapsulation?
Encapsulation? Yeah, that's the concept here, is the fact that I'm trying to put everything in one unit and I'm trying to hide those data members from the users. And by hiding them, I'm simply, again, creating them in a form of private, so the user will not have access to it. Okay. So here we go. Let's look here. We got private string for the title, private string for the author, private integer for the publisher, private string for the ISBN, private double for the price, and private integer for the number of pages. And as you can see here, those are all properties with no dedicated or assigned values directly. So now at this point, let me just show you what is possible, let me show you the concept of objects out of this. Now, if I go back to the source and right click on it and choose class again, and of course now I'm going to be moving to a new window, so let me go share it. In this case, I'm going to type main class, and this time I'm going to make sure that I have the public static main method. And I have to go back to, and you can see now I have two files, the main class and the Java class, the book class. And you can see here the book has those data members, and here's my main class. Now inside the main class, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here and say book B1, book B2, book B3. You can see that I'm creating objects. You see, B1 is a book, B2 is a book, B3 is a book. B1 has all the properties that the book has. So B1 has an author, a price, a year of publish, number of pages, and all the properties that we described here. And each one of them has its own properties. But again, what are these values? We're not done yet. We're going to have to continue until we get to this point. Okay, so those are my data members. How do we assign values to those data members? Well, mainly there are many different ways we can do that. We can use setters and getters, which I'm going to show you how do we do that. And setters and getters, again, are very, very important to understand. So in Eclipse, if you right click any place inside your class and you go to sources and you choose generate setters and getters, and you choose them all, select all, and then you create generate, you will notice automatically for each one of those data members that I created, we got a getter and we have a setter. And I want you to pay attention to each one of those classes that has been generated. Let's start with get title. Get title simply will return whatever the title is. And if you go here to this method, set title, you simply can use it to set the title with the title that you want. So let's just focus. And again, whatever is applied here, it will be applied to the author and to the published year, to the ISBN, to the price, and also to the number of pages. So let's take one example, just try to understand what is the point of these two methods, the getter and the setter. As you can see here, the getter will give you back the title, and the setter will let you set the title. And whatever you want to set the title with is simply going to be assigned to it. I want you to pay close attention to this keyword here. Okay, here's what we do usually. If I take this keyword away, I will have a problem. Now let's just focus. Let me put it back, and let me just tell you something. We have a string that is the title that I have here, and this title is a data member. Okay, so that's a variable. That's a data member of the class book, and we have title here, which is an argument in a method. Okay, so in another word, we have two variables that are sharing the same name. And this is an acceptable case, by the way. The thing is, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to assign the title that is an argument to the title that is a data member. And for me to be able to do that, I'm saying title equal title. Now, this is where the confusion coming from our code here to the compiler. He's simply saying, well, you're assigning title to a title. How do I know you're trying to assign this title to this title, or you're trying to assign this title to this title? As you can see here, there's no way you can tell because they share the same name. So how do we distinguish between them? The keyword this is what we use to distinguish the data members from arguments.
Yes, that is about the key. Or you can just right click here and restore.
Wait, is somebody asking a question or? Okay. Okay, let me just put this on the side. Okay, so let me go back and explain what I just did. And again, remember here, whatever I'm saying here is simply going to be repeated in all these other setters and getters. The getter will simply give you back the title, which again, the title, which is the data member, but the setter is when you try to change the title. And how do I change the title? Here, there's a way I can get rid of this keyword. If I just come here and say TI, and I can say TI or title equal TI. So whatever TI is going to be assigned to title. That's obvious. But the problem is this is against the rule that we follow when it comes to naming a variable. We always say name a variable with something that represents what it is. And TI here doesn't represent a title. So if I'm going to create a variable to represent a title, then I have to use the word title. But the problem is that I already have a variable which is a data member with a name or identified title. So at this point, I'm getting title assigned to title. This is causing some confusing, but we need to have a method that I can distinguish between the data member and the argument. So in this case, the keyword this is simply used here to do that. Now let me take this concept and move to the main function to show you what I'm talking about here. If I come here and say b1 dot set title, and if I come here and say rich dad for that. So that's B1. Now, of course, he's complaining about something here. And if you put it here, he's going to tell you, well, B1 is not initialized. So he's not complaining about this part, but we need to initialize B1 before we can use it. And this is, again, a problem here. Let me just explain what did I just did here when I created B1 and B2 and B3. And for me to do that, let me new. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Use a Word document. Okay, so here's my Word document. And let's see here. Where's the design draw? Okay. Now you guys remember inside the memory, we simply have memory locations. So if you want to imagine, this is my memory location. This is my memory, my system. When I typed book B1, book B2, and book B3, what I did simply is that I reserved a space inside the memory, and I'm calling it B1. And I reserved another space inside the memory, I called it B2. And as I reserved a third space inside the memory, and I called it B3. Now, B1 and B3 at this point are empty. There's nothing stored here. And for that reason, he's complaining and telling me it's not initialized because I simply don't have anything. Oh, sorry, not here. Oops, no. We'll just keep it this way. Nope. If I can move this down, no. Control. I want to just go back to, yes, here it is. So this is again in the memory. There's a space for B1 and space for B2 and space for B3. Those spaces are empty at this point.
I have a question.
Do we need to initialize private data members? Yes, we do need to initialize them. And this is my next point. What's the question?
Is B1, B2, and B3 representing objects?
Yes, they present objects. But at this point, let me just go back to the Eclipse. Where is Eclipse? Here it is. At this point, they are only spaces reserved inside the memory, and they're not referencing an actual book at this point.
Okay, because I know that usually there's another way that you use to create objects. So I was wondering.
Yes, this is again me. I simply created the object, but I didn't initialize it. And by initialize it simply means I didn't reserve a space for the whole book that will hold all the values that you see here. I'm going to explain in details in a sec what is that supposed to mean. But let me just take this one away for now. And just to show you here, again, I can set the book using this technique, but he's not going to accept it until B1 is initialized. And if I want to get the book, let me just go back here. If I say B1 dot get title, this is supposed to return the title. And if I come here, for example, just type system dot out dot print print line, and I'm trying to print it, and he's still complaining about B1 is not initialized. So let's go ahead and talk about what does initialize simply means. Here's what we can do. I can come here to the book and set it to none or unknown. And I can go to the author and set it to unknown. And I can come here to the publish year. That's an integer. We'll put it 0. And for the ISBN, I'll put it as 0 as well. Whatever I'm doing here is not the best way, by the way, to get the job done. But I'm just showing you an option that we have. This is a double, so that's going to be 0.0. A number of pages is simply going to be 0. So what am I doing here? I'm simply assigning default values to the title, the author, the publication year, the ISBN, and the price, and the number of pages. Will that fix the problem? No, it will not fix the problem. For you to fix this problem, you must have what we call, and you have to pay attention to this, what we call, my bad, what is it called? A constructor, a default constructor, or a constructor in general. What is the job of the constructor? The job of the constructor is simply to reserve in space inside the memory and to assign default values to the properties. Okay, so at this point, let me just tell you, at this point, with the code that I'm writing here, inside the memory, there are 3 spaces that are reserved to hold books, but they are not referencing an actual book. So how do I get this problem solved? Again, we need to have constructors to solve this problem. And constructors, again, will have a simple job, which is creating the object inside the memory and then assign values to it. And here's what's going to happen. If I come here, I'm going to create the first and the most important constructor, which is what we call the default constructor. Default constructors, or constructors in general, will have a public specifier. It has to be public. It cannot be private. And it doesn't have a return data type, not even void. Okay. And most importantly, it should hold the same name of the class. Default constructor has no arguments. Open a curly brace and close it, and I'm done. Okay. This is what we mean by the default constructor. And I created the default constructor. And you can see here, default constructor is empty at this point. And if I go back to my class here, to my book here, what I'm going to do, look at this, very, very important. I'm going to go here to B1 and say equal new book, open and close curly brace. And immediately after I use new book, you notice that error here is gone. And if I come here and do the same thing, equal new book, empty, equal new book, and it's empty. And I'm done. I created 3 books, and each one of them I'm calling the default constructor. And if you look at the default constructor is empty. So the question is, and let me just take this one away for now. What will be the values of each one of those, like the title, the author, the publication, and the ISBN, and the price and the number of pages for each one of those Bs that I have, B1, B2, and B3? And the answer is simply those default values. So every single title here for B1 and B2 and B3 will have unknown title, unknown author, 0 publication year, ISBN 0, price 0, number of pages are 0. To give you an idea here, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go, let me copy this, and I'm going to just mix between them. So you will see that the values are simply going to be the same for each one of them. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got get title, get author, get price. Now let me go back here. We got the author, the publication year. Copy that. Put it here. And of course, it has to be uppercase P. And what else? Publication year, ISBN, and number of pages. So ISBN. And finally, let me copy this. Copy this and put it here. Control V. ISBN, and the final one was number of pages. So let me copy that. And number of pages. Control V. And again, N has to be uppercase. And I took the T by mistake. Look what I'm going to do. If I run it, you will notice unknown, unknown, 0, 0, 0, 0. This is for B1. If I change this one to 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 again, if I run it, you will notice I'll get the exact same result, and same is going to be applied for B3. So let me just explain to you what happened when I actually did this part. When I said I created this default constructor, which is an empty, and then I added the new book here. And let me go back to my Word document. What happened here simply, space inside the memory, let's say this space here. In this space, we created an actual book. And that book will simply hold all the default values that we had before. Now, this book space have an IP, have a, what they call it, a memory location address. And let's say the address is A11. This A11 is simply going to be stored here, A11. And now B1 is holding the address of a memory location. It's not a memory location, it's a big chunk of memory that hold a book object. Now, of course, the same thing is simply going to be applied for B2. Another space inside the memory is simply going to be reserved to hold an object of a book. And that book simply will hold the same default values that we talked about. And let's say the space here is address is 1, 2, C. Then this 1, 2, and C is simply going to be stored here. And now B2 is holding the address of a memory location 1, 2, C. And that memory 1, 2, C is simply holding an object of a book. And same thing is applied to B3.
I have a question.
Yes.
So a book, like it has the title, the year, the stuff like that. Is the year, the title, all that information stored in the same address?
No. It's a group of addresses, but the first memory location is going to be actually sent into the B1. So, for example, this area here, you can imagine they have, let's say, 25 memory locations, or 30, or 100 memory locations. Whatever's going to be sent here is the first one only. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, let me just go back to Eclipse, because what's coming next is very, very important. Now, you may ask a question, so what is the point of assigning default values to all the books that I'm creating? And I want you to think about it this way. Sometimes you want to create an object, but you have no idea about any information related to this object. Let me put it this way. Imagine in a hospital, we have a system, and in the system, we have a section for patients. And then we got a patient that just came to the hospital from let's say a car accident where he cannot provide you with any piece of information. So you need to create that patient object into the system and give that patient default values until he wakes up. And then you can ask him about his name, his ID, his address, and all this kind of information. So you can update them later using the setters. So that's the default constructor. Simply is used to create objects that we really don't know the values. Now, the thing that I want to say here, this is not the perfect way to do this job. The perfect way to do this job is simply to let the default constructor finish this job. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this, put it here, and I'm going to take all this away. So I'm just going to say the title is going to be unknown. The publication year is going to be 0. Author is going to be 0. Oh, wait, I have to take the string away and the double away. And number of pages. This way, it's better than the way I explained it here. Let the default constructor simply assign the values for you instead of you doing it here. Both ways is acceptable, but this is more common. Oh, wait a minute. Why is he complaining about this? Pages. Okay. So this is the default constructor. Now the question is, what if I actually, let's say here, this is we had, for example, they told us like this library is going to get like new 10 books. Do you have any information about these books? No, not yet, until the books arrives, and then we can know the titles of the author, the publication, the prices, all this information will be available later. So if I want to create 10 books, I'll just go ahead and create B1, B2, B3, B4, all the way to B10. And they're all going to hold the default values. Now later, of course, and let me show you that. If I come here, let's go back. Let's use B2 as an example here. If I go here and say B2 dot set title, and I come here and type, for example, rich dad, poor dad, B2 dot set author. I forgot his name. I'll just go with Adam. Let's say B2 dot set price. The price simply will be, let's say, $70, I believe, 0.99. And then B2 dot set. What do we have set? Author price, ISBN. And I'll just give it one, two, three, four. Okay, what else? We have a lot of things here. Number of pages, B2 dot set number of pages. I'll go with that's 250. And finally, B2 dot set publication year. Let me just copy it from you. This is way too long to type. Should have done that before. And I'll just go, it was 1980. So you can see here at the beginning for B2, I created the book with the default values and I said, print them, show me the default values. And then after that, I decided to go and use the setters to change all these values. And now you will notice that the first time he's going to show me the unknown and the zeros values. And then later he's going to show me after I call the set method and I change all the values, he's going to show me the values that I actually used and I updated with. So here, and here it is. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Adam, 70.99, 180, 123, and 250 pages. Now, there is a question. Well, what if I have the values already available and I know how to use them? Well, what if all the properties, values that for a book that I want to create are already available? So here it is. Let's do it. I'm going to copy this constructor and I'm going to put it here, Control V. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to create what we call an argument constructor. And for the argument constructor, what I'm going to do, I am going to use values that will be passed to the book constructor. And I am simply going to use those values to assign them to the books that we're going to create. So we got string for the author, the publication year, copy that. Control V. And we can do publication year ISBN, so string ISBN. Now here, the order is going to be very important later. And then we got the price and then number of pages. So let's go ahead and do that. We got the price here. And we got the number of pages. And at this point, I also want you to pay attention that the body of this constructor is simply going to be updated. So instead of title equal unknown, title will equal title. But of course, we're going to have the same problem that we talked about before. So I'd have to tell which one of them is which one. So this title, which I'm talking about, the data member, is simply going to be holding the value of the title that we're passing here. Same thing is going to be applied to the author. So it's going to be this author equal author. And if I just go here and copy this line and just put it there, this will get the job done. Control V. Now, this is not the best way. I'm going to explain a concept in a sec. ISBN and the price. And then after that, where's the price? Here's the price. Control V. And the number of pages, of course, same thing is going to be applied. I'm going to explain in a sec how this is going to be useful. If I go here, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to main class. And here, book 1 and book 2. In book 2, we decide to go with the default constructor. And then after we use the 7 to change the values. But look what I'm going to do for book 1. Book 1, what do I call a book? That's the title. The author, let's go with Smith. Now, I want you to pay attention here. The order that I'm going here has to match the order that you have here. So the title, the author, and the publication year. Publication year, I'll go with 2002. And what else do we have? We have the ISBN, and then the price and the number of pages. So the ISBN, I'm just going to put something like 111222333. And the price, I'll go, it costs, let's say, $35.99. And number of pages, 201. Okay, that's simply what book 1 is all about. Now, if I copy this, and let's go all the way to the bottom, and say B1, get the title, get the author, get the price, get the year, get the ISBN, get the number of pages, you will notice that B1 is simply going to be whatever you decided to assign to it here. This is what we call an argument constructor. If I run it, you will notice here that how to talk to anyone, Smith 35.99, 2020, this is the ISBN, and this is the number of pages. So when you create an object, you have two options here. We have the default constructor and we have the argument constructor. If you don't know any piece of information about the object that you're going to create, then you simply call the default constructor where you pass no arguments. But if you know the information that you need and the data you need to be assigned to the properties of the object, you call the argument constructor. Now, the question is, what if I have half of the information or one piece of the information or a group of the piece of information? Then what do you need to do? You need to have a constructor for each case. Okay, and I'm just going to show you an example here. What if I only have the title of the book? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a case for that. Public book. And we'll call it string title. And here's what I'm going to do. Since the only piece of information available is the title, so I'm going to copy the title and put it here. And then after that, I'm going to copy everything else and put it here. So only the title is going to be assigned. And let's just use B3 for that. So if I go B3, let's say intro to...
I have a question.
Yes.
So you're saying if a piece of information isn't known, you can create a separate
Constructor.
constructor to have it like fulfill that. Does it only work if that one, like, is it like I don't know, does it work if it's just, do you have to write it for specific cases, or can it be like...
It's up to you again. If you want to think about it, you probably may find yourself in a case where you have to put all the possible combinations that you may actually need. Well, there's a way, again, if you choose the technique that I started with, when I assign default values to those, you may not need to repeat the same code here and here and here. For example, if I decided to come here and put the title to be unknown, and keep this space empty, if I go to a constructor where I only know the book, then I will just have to run this piece of code without the need to go through all this.
Oh, okay. So this constructor is if you only know the name of the book?
Yes, that's so you just assign the name of the book.
Okay.
But again,
Okay.
if you want, it's up to you. You can have as much as you want constructors based on every single possible combination of available information.
Okay, I get it.
Okay, so here we go. This is again our book class. At this point, our book is simply functioning very well. I have a default constructor I have an argument constructors. I learned about how do I use the keyword this. Okay. Let's see here. We learned about the keyword this. Private versus constructors. We talked about that. Let me just go and show you one thing that I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of this. Inside the main function, this is the point that I'm going for here. Let's say the year of the publication of any book should be a positive number. I think we can agree all that there, yeah, the year or the number of pages, for example, for a book, let's say, has to be more than 10 pages. If a book has less than 10 pages, then that's not a book. This is a set of rules that we're just establishing right now. Okay. So based on what I have here, if the user for, let's say, book 1 decided that the number of pages for my book is simply 2 pages, then this is simply going to be acceptable with no problems. And if I run it, it will show you that the number of pages are simply 2. So by just doing it this way, I am giving the user the freedom to assign a value to the number of pages. Now, again, if the user decided to do the following, let me just copy this. If the user decided to come here and say B, for example, B1 dot number of pages equal, let's say, -10. He will not be able to do that, of course, because why? Because B1 is invisible, because it's private. But at the same time, if the user decided to call the book and create the book and decided to pass -10, there will be no complaining about that. Why? Because if you go back to the method, where is it? Here's it. Where is it? Here. Number of pages in the default constructor, we said whatever the user is going to be passing, assign it to number of pages. So how do we change that so we have control over whatever value we want to be assigned to number of pages? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use number of pages as an example here. I'm going to go to the method of set number of pages, and I'm going to come here, very, very important, and I will say if number of pages, copy that and put it here. If number of pages was less than 10, let's say anything less than 10 is not acceptable. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show a message, and I'm going to say system.out.print line, and I'll just type invalid entry. Number of pages will be set to 10 by default. Okay, so if the user decides to send me any number that's less than 10, I'm going to set it to 10 by default. How do I do that? I'll just come here and say, copy this, cut it actually. Oh, sorry, I should copy it again. And I'll just change this one here to equal 10. And then here, I'm going to come and type else. Number of pages equal number of pages. So if the user decides to pass a number that is less than 10, then what's going to happen, this message is going to be shown on the screen, and then the number of pages will be set to 10. Now, if this condition is not false, that simply means the number of pages was actually greater than 10, then whatever that value is simply going to be assigned to number of pages. So what I need to do here, in this area here, instead of just where is it? Here. And instead of setting the number of pages directly this way, this is where I'm going to come here and say, set number of pages to whatever the number of pages that was passed to me here. So for example, if I pass -10, -10 is going to be passed here. Set number of pages is going to be executed. So it's going to come here and it's going to check here. Number of pages actually less than 10. So it's going to show me this error message, and then it's going to set it to 10, and then it's going to use it. So if I go back here, let's see this
Wait,
part. Yes.
Can you show what you did with the set number of pages thing again? I didn't see it. Let's scroll up.
Here.
Yeah, can you explain that again?
Okay. Previously, what I had was this dot number of pages, Control V, equal number of pages. That was what I had previously. Now, if I keep it as it is, he's simply going to take whatever the value that you have here and assign it to the number of pages. And in this case, I'm passing -10. So -10 is simply going to be assigned to the number of pages. So I told you that this method simply will not give you control over what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Well, so instead of that, this is what I'm doing. I have a method called set number of pages. And the set number of pages is simply going to receive whatever the number that you have here. So this number, for example, is -10. So this is going to be -10 here. And you're going to call the method set number of pages. Where's set number of pages? Here is set number of pages. So the execution is going to come to this point. The -10 is assigned here. And you're going to compare -10 with the 10. Since the number that I have is less than 10, it's not acceptable. So it's simply going to show me this error message, and it's going to go and set the number of pages to actual 10. Now, this 10 is my choice. I decided it's 10. You can choose whatever number you want.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, if this case is false, simply means this is going to be executed. That simply means the number was actually greater than 10, and it will work. So let's look here. And I have to pay attention here since, oh, by the way, since the default constructor is going to be assigning 0, where is it? To the number of pages, they all going to show you the same error message. And let me run it so you'll see it immediately after I run it. And here it is. If I go, so invalid entry number of pages. Well, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, sorry. No, just the first one, which is B1. Let me just show you where's B1. Here's B1. You see here, I passed -10, but the value that was stored is actually 10. You may ask, why did B1 and B2 and B3 didn't complain about that? Because in B1 and B3, we called the default constructor where I'm assigning it to 0, and the second one I'm assigning it to 0 again. But if I use the same concept here, it will not be acceptable. So the bottom line, what I'm trying to say here is, whenever you have a value that you want to have some restrictions about what should be assigned to, you always use the set method. And inside the set method, you go and you put all the rules that you want. In this case, I decided the number of pages should be greater than 10 or equal 10. But if anything that's less than that, I cannot consider that as a book. I'll just change the number of pages to be a default. Of course, you can take any other action that you want, but this time I'm just going with this action. This is public, private, turn, data types. Okay. Let me see. Now we have the constructors and we have the getters and the setters. I want to move on to another subject, and I will get back to this one immediately after that. So I'm going to close those two files. And I have a class that I created here. It's called testing project. In the testing project, I have a testing class here, and I have a testing main function here, and they're both in front of me. Now, why am I saying this? Why did I move to this other project? Because I'm going to try to demonstrate something that is extremely important to understand about Java. Somehow it's related to what we're doing in the main class, in the book class, but I don't want to go and explain in the book class because this is going to get a little bit complicated. So I decided to create a simple class here and try to show you things that are important. So in this testing project, we have a testing class. In this testing class, we have a private data member where I'm assigning x to 10 by default, and I have a default constructor that has no statements here. So that simply means any object of testing class is simply The X will hold the value of 10. And here I have the argument constructor where I'm passing X here to this. I have the getter and I have the setter. Something very simple, something very easy and straightforward. Now, inside my main function, what I'm going to do here, oh, I forgot to create the main function. Let's go ahead and do that. Public, static, void, main. And here we got string. And then args. Okay, so here we go. This is my main function. Let me just give it a try, see if it's going to run with no problems. No problems. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create two objects. The first one, it's called testing. Let's see if I go back here. What is that? What did I call it? Testing class. Okay. Testing class. We'll call it T1. Sorry, T1, not 1. And I'm going to come here and do the same thing. Testing class T2. Now, just like how I explained it before inside for the bookstore, when you do something like that, let me just go straight to the Word document. Word document, where is it? Here it is. Let me take all this away, start a new document. Okay, let me share the new document that I just opened. So I created two objects. In those two objects, I'm going to simply create space inside the memory. Here's the space inside the memory. And what's very important to understand here, at this point, we have T1 here. What was lowercase t, so I don't really have to do it uppercase. Choose it again. T1, and we have another space. We call it T2. Okay, so this is again what I did before. Now, if I go back to Eclipse, where's Eclipse? Here it is. If I come here and type new testing class and keep it empty this way, or let's just pass, for example, the value 100. What I just did here, and again, let me go back to my Word document. I created a space by using the new keyword. I'm creating the object. Let's say we're creating it here. Come on. Okay, here we go. Let me just choose a different space. Let's say we're creating it here. And in this area, X will hold the value of 100. And what I have here, a memory space or address, let's call it AB1. And AB1 is simply going to be stored here. AB1. So T1 is holding the address AB1, which is referencing an object at that memory location. So everything looks good. Everything looks normal. Here's what we're going to do. And this is very, very important. And I want you to pay attention to, let's see here. I don't have it here. Let me go back to Eclipse. If I decided to do the following, and this is extremely important, T1 equal T2, sorry, equal T1. Okay? T2 equal T1. What I just did here, I did the following. Let me go back to my Eclipse, my Word document. I decided simply to store the value. I want you to pay attention to this. A, B1 in this space that is assigned to T2. So what just happened here, I am simply referencing the space inside the memory with the address AB1 by T1 and T2. So both of those are simply referencing the same spot inside the memory that hold the object with the value of x equal 100. So why is this important? Because this is going to be a big deal. Because let me just go back here. And I want you to pay attention to what's going to happen here. If I decided to create a third object, testing, oh, you know, before I do testing object T2, if I come here, and you want to, yeah, let me do it. If I come here and create testing class, let's call it T3, T3 equal new testing class 100, and put semicolon. Let me show what happened here in this case. And let me go back to my Word document. So what I just did simply is that I reserved a space inside the memory. I call it T3. And in another space inside the memory, another space is reserved where x equal 100 again. And this memory location is holding the value, let's say C1b. So what's going to be stored here? C1 and B. Come on. And B. So now you may ask the question, what is the point of all this? I'm going to get to the point right now. If I go back to my Eclipse, and I'm going to start doing some tests. And I will say system.out.print line, and I'm going to do those tests. I want you to pay attention. I'm going to say T1 double equal T2. And let me just repeat this. And I'll say T1 equal T3. And here, I'm going to check if T2 equal T3. Okay? So I want you to pay attention, close attention to what I'm doing here. In the first assignment operator, I'm checking if T1 equals T2. Remember here, when you use the double equal sign between objects, you're simply asking the question, are those two objects referencing the same spot inside the memory? So because T1 and T2, if you go back to that Word document, are referencing the same spot inside the memory, so this is going to be true. But when I compare T1 to T3 and T3 to T2, even though each X of them is 100, because if I come here, let me just show you that system line, and I'm going to just print them on the screen, dot get X, and then plus, I'll put a space, plus T2 dot get X, plus, make a space, plus T3 dot get X. You will notice that all of them will hold the value of X equal 100. But when it comes to testing equality using the double equal sign, I am checking, and remember, this is very important, that I'm checking if two objects are referencing the same spot inside the memory or not. So this is going to be true, this is going to be false, this is going to be false. Let me run it. True, false, false. So that simply means T1 and T2 are referencing the same spot inside the memory, but T1 and T3 are not doing that. T1 and T3, T1 and T2 and T3, they're not doing the same thing. Now look what I'm going to do, just to give you a change. If I come here and say T2 equal T3. So I decided to move whatever address is stored inside T2 and change it with whatever the T3 address. What I'm going to get, this is going to be false, this is going to be false, but this is going to be true. And in each case, you would notice that the value of 100 would never change. So if I run it again, false, false, and true. Okay. Now, what if, and I'm going to do that right now. What if I decided to type the following? T2 equal new testing class, and I'll set it to 100. Okay. So what's going to happen? What is the effect of this line? Now, let me just take this line away for now, so I can just focus on the effect of this line. Well, the effect of this line is simply going to be as following. If I go back to here, a new space inside the memory is going to be reserved. For example, this one, and X here is going to equal the value of 100. And let's say this space here is called C1A. And C1A is simply going to be stored in T2. So we will have a simple C1A here. And at this point, I will guarantee you, if we go back to Eclipse, they're all going to be false in this case. So if I run it, they're all going to be false. False, false, false. Now the question is, how can I actually check if two objects are identical? Okay, this is very important. So if you use a double equal sign, you're simply not checking for identical classes, objects. You're simply asking a different question. And this is, again, a mistake that a lot of beginners fall into. When you compare two objects and you want to test for equality, using the double assignment operator simply means you are testing if both of those objects are referencing the same spot inside the memory. So if I want to perform the actual testing for those two classes, I need to have a method for it. And that method is simply called equal to. So I'm going to come here and say public, and it's going to return Boolean because it's going to return true or false. I don't know if it's equal to or equal to. Let me just double check before I continue here. Yeah, I think it just equals, not equals to. Okay. That 2 was an extra. So just equals. And in this case, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pass testing class, I'll call it other. And look what I'm going to say. I'm going to say if this dot x equal, and remember here, this is not Python. Other dot x is x, yeah. Return true. Else return false. Semicolon. This is how we actually compare objects by simply creating a method for that. And that method is called equals, and equals simply, you're going to test. Now, since I just have one variable x, I'm doing one variable x. If I have two of them, and then I have to put and, the second one are equal, the third one are equal, and that's how you test for equality. Now, if I want to perform a comparison for two class objects, or T1 and T2, all I have to do here is to change this to dot equals T2. And the same thing here. Let's copy this. Control V. And if I copy this, put it here. So this is going to be T1, T2, T1, T1, T2, T3, T3, T2. Now, as you can see, the last time I checked, I got them all false when I was choosing the double equal, because I was checking if they are all reserved in the like multiple objects referencing the same sorry, multiple identifier referencing the same objects in the memory. But now, since I'm using equals, I'm checking for equality between the content of the objects, and that simply will flip all of them to be true because they all hold the value of 100. So my point here, what I'm trying to say here is that whenever you create a class and you want to compare two objects that belong to that class, you cannot use a double equal sign. You need to have a method called equals. So based on that, let me close this. And this will be the last part of this class. We're going to continue on Thursday with static members and other assignment of references. We talked about that, so we're doing good. Okay. Next class, when we come, we're going to continue. But before we do that, let me just go back to the book. And I'm going to try to check for equality between books here. If I want to know if two books are exactly the same, I can come here and do that. And this is going to be a little bit long, but work with me. I'm going to go here and say public Boolean equals. And then we will have book, we'll call it other, and then we'll come down here. Now, what I'm going to do here, this is going to take a really long time. I'm going to say if, and I will just say return true, else return false. And in this case, this is what I'm going to do. As I said, this is going to take a really long time. I'm going to say title double equal other. Oh, wait a minute. I even can't do that here, because if you think about it, let's just go back here. Titles are strings. And because they're strings, I have to say dot equal title dot equal ignore case. I think I'm misspelling it somehow. Let's see here if you're going to take that. And we type author dot title. Yep, he is complaining about this. Compare equal ignore case. Here it is. What did I misspell or something? Okay. So if this is the same, and we have the author. So author dot, let me copy here, equal the case for other dot author, and let's say price double equal price. Now, by the way, this is an issue here because I'm comparing double with a double, and it's not recommended to use a double equal for doubles, but let's just let that go. And number of pages equal other dot number of pages. You can see here that's getting way too long. This has to be double equal. And then the ISBN. Okay, ISBN. So ISBN dot equal ignore the case other dot ISBN. And then did we miss anything yet here? We got the title, author, price, number of pages, ISBN, price. So I think we got them all. So if they match everything that I have here that matches with the other, then return true. Otherwise, return false. So this is a method that is, what is that?
Publication year.
Oh, yes, sorry. I can do it here. Let me just go copy it here. Publication year. I had a feeling that I missed one. I can put it at the beginning. Publication year equal other dot publication year end. And that's simply how do we compare them? As you can see, it gets really, really long. Now, of course, I can replace this whole thing with an internal method. Instead of me writing this long line here, I can put it somewhere else and just call it, but I'll just keep it simple at this point. Since I have like 4 minutes left, I'm going to just show you one last trick here, and I'll let you guys go. And the trick that I'm going to be doing here is basically these 4 lines or 5 or 6 lines that I have here that I'm using here to show you the information of the book. I wish if I can make it done in an easier way. And to do that, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here. Let me just go all the way down to, this is B1. So let's use B1 as an example. If I come here and say system.out.print line, and if I just type B1 here and leave it that way, if I run it, let me show you what B1 is going to look like. All the way to the bottom, this is B1 here. B1 is a book object that is stored in a memory location of 1EDF1C96. Okay, now instead of this piece of information that has no values to me as a user, I wish I can see the title, the author, the price, the published year, the ISBN, and the number of pages to be printed instead of the memory location that holds B1. To be able to do that, we have a very special trick here, special method. It's called toString. And here's what I'm going to show you how to do it. You create a public method. It's a return a string. It's called toString. And this toString has no arguments. And this is what we're going to put in the toString method. It's going to be a little bit long, but I want you to work with me. I'm going to create a string. I'll call it str. In this str, I am assigning the following to it. And I will just say title, colon, plus title. And I will put a plus, double quotation, \n. So what am I doing here? I'm showing the word title followed with the colon and a space, and then whatever the title of the book is going to be assigned to the string. And then after that, go to the next line. Actually, let me put a dot and go to the next line. And then what I'm going to do, what I'm doing here is instead of me having a real long line, I'm just going to try to do it in multiple lines. So I'm going to come here and say str plus equal. So I'm going to add to it. What am I going to add? The author, colon space, plus author, plus double quotation, dot \n. Come on, why do you add that one automatically? And now I'm done with the author. If I go with the str plus equal, and we have the publication year. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me copy it from here. Put it here. Have some spaces. Colon plus publication year plus dot \n semicolon. And I think you guys know where I'm going with this. So we got the author, we got the title, the author. Let's go with the price and ISBN. So ISBN plus ISBN plus double quotation dot \n semicolon str plus equal price plus price plus dot \n semicolon. Okay, so we got the price, ISBN, number of pages, I believe, number of pages, and what else? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's the last part. str plus equal Control V, number of pages. So let's go ahead and put some spaces here. Change this to uppercase, and this is again me just formatting the output. Plus \n. Oops, why are you doing it here? dot backslash n and semicolon. And finally, return str, semicolon. And I don't need the last one actually here, the backslash n. We'll just keep it with a dot. Now, after I created the toString method, here's what's going to happen. Every time the compiler will find out that you're trying to print an object, and instead of showing you the memory location, it's simply going to go and execute this program here, this method here. So it's going to construct a string for you that holds all the values of that book and is going to print it for you. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me run it. And here it is. Look at this. The title, How to Talk to Anyone, Author Smith, blah, blah, blah. Oh, number of pages is 0. Did I?
Oh, you didn't call the number of pages.
Oh, okay, here it
in
is.
the
Okay,
screen.
that makes sense. Okay. And here it is. So let's go back here, run it again. And here we go. So instead of me now going through all these getters, all I'm going to do, take this out. And get this out as well. Let's just keep one of them out there and change this one here. Keep the setters and take this one out. And just keep B2 to show you before and after. And I'm going to come here and copy this and put B3, sorry. And B3. And I am, after I'm running this, I will immediately stop the class. Sorry for holding you a little bit longer than usual, but here it is. So this is again the first B1 that we created. And this is sorry, this is B1, and this is B2 with the titles, and then B3 after that somewhere. Anyway, so I am done for today. Let me just stop sharing. Next class on Thursday, we're going to continue with a few points remain of this point. I will try my best to come on Thursday with an idea about how the final is going to look. Sorry, the first test is going to look like. You don't have to worry about it. And we'll talk on Thursday. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
When is the homework and project due?
Oh, for this week?
Yeah, or which, because I saw one was unlisted, or I guess the due dates weren't listed on Canvas. So
Oh, let me just go
wondering.
look at
Project
the
5,
assignments.
homework 5.
For this week, I don't know, what do we have exactly? Wait a minute, what am I? The project, we have the homework. So homework 4 has a due date. Homework 5 and project 5, they don't have due dates. Let me go to the syllabi to check that out. So project 5 and homework 5, which, oh, we're still in so homework 5 is due this week. I'm going to go and change the due date for it. I'm going to set the due date for that. Project 5, we still have, next week, we're going to have project 5. So let me just change the homework due date. So if I go to
Okay,
assignments,
are we gonna work in class for that project?
project 5, yeah, probably I just want to make sure that to see what we're supposed to be covering that day, and we'll see. I have to go and double check what we're going to cover next week to know if we're going to work on it in the class time or not. But for now, homework 5 should be. I'll make the due date for it right now as we're talking about it. And
Okay.
say I'll make the due date on October 11th. Let me save it. And we're done. So that's available for project 5. We're just gonna have to wait until we're done with chapter 6, and then after that, we'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
See you.